Caleb Walker returned to his ranch just after sunrise, dust still clinging to his boots from the early ride. The morning air was cold, sharper than usual, and the sky stretched wide and pale over the open land. He was tired, but the kind of tired that came from honest work, the kind he didn't mind. He tied his horse near the fence and walked toward his wagon to grab the tools he had left the night before. But as he neared the wagon, something felt strange. The canvas flap was slightly lifted, and one of his blankets looked oddly bunched up, as if someone had moved it. At first he thought maybe one of the barn cats had crawled inside to escape the cold. But as he got closer, he noticed the small rise and fall of slow breathing under the blanket. He froze, surprised. Someone was there, someone small, someone sleeping. He stepped closer, careful not to startle whoever it was. With 2 fingers, he lifted a corner of the blanket. And there she was, a young woman curled tightly like a frightened bird, her clothes dusty from travel, her face pale from exhaustion. She slept so deeply that even the cold wind didn't stir her. Her shoes were worn thin, and her hair was tangled as if she had been walking for miles. Caleb blinked in disbelief. He wasn't the kind of man who found strangers sleeping in his wagon. His ranch was too far from town, too quiet, too plain. Yet here she was. He cleared his throat softly. "Miss. Hey now," he said gently, not wanting to scare her. Her eyes snapped open instantly, wide and full of fear. She scrambled backward, nearly falling off the wagon as she pressed herself into the corner. I'm sorry," she gasped. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't stealing. I just needed, please don't be angry." Her voice shook so badly that Caleb raised his hands at once, trying to calm her. "Easy there," he said slowly. "Ain't nobody yelling. You're safe." She stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly, as if expecting he might drag her out or shout at her. But Caleb just stood there, calm as soft rain. "I just found you sleeping in my wagon," he said. "That's all." Then, with a small half-smile to lighten her fear, he added, "Reckon that makes you my wife now." Some. Her eyes widened even more, and she shook her head so fast he almost laughed. No, I didn't mean anything like that. I just needed a place to rest for the night. I was cold and tired, and I didn't think anyone lived here. I swear I'll leave right now." She moved to climb out of the wagon, but Caleb stepped back and held up his hands again. "Miss, hold on. Nobody's forcing you anywhere. You look half frozen. You eaten anything?" She hesitated. Her lips parted slightly, and she shook her head. Caleb nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. "Well then," he said gently, "you're not leaving until you eat something warm." She looked confused, even suspicious, as if kindness was something she rarely trusted. He stepped aside, giving her space. After a long pause, she climbed down from the wagon, her movements weak and unsteady. Caleb noticed how she held her arms around herself, not just for warmth, but almost like protection. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Eliza," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Eliza Hart. Well, Miss Eliza Hart, there's biscuits on the stove and water heating already. Ain't much, but it'll fill you up." She followed him slowly toward the small cabin, still cautious, still afraid he might suddenly change his tone. But every step he took was steady and calm, as though he had nothing to hide and no intention to harm her. Inside, the cabin was simple but warm. A small fire burned in the stove, filling the room with gentle heat. Caleb handed her a plate with biscuits and a cup of warm water. She stared at it like she hadn't seen real food in days. "You can sit," he told her softly. She sat and ate slowly at first, as if still unsure. Then hunger won, and she ate faster. Caleb didn't comment. He just pretended to busy himself at the counter, to give her space. When she finally finished, she looked embarrassed for eating so quickly. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "Don't be," Caleb replied. Foods meant to be eaten. For the first time, she gave a small, shy smile, and he noticed she looked younger than he first thought. Maybe early 20s. Tired, but strong in her own quiet way. Caleb sat at the table across from her. "Mind telling me what you're running from?" he asked, not pushing, just offering her a chance. Eliza lowered her gaze, her fingers twisted around each other nervously. For a long moment, she said nothing. Caleb waited patiently. Finally, she whispered, "My uncle." Her voice trembled as she continued. "After my parents died, I lived with him. He always said I owed him for taking me in. He wanted me to marry someone I didn't want. A much older man. I didn't want that life. I didn't want any life he chose for me." She looked up at Caleb with tired, honest eyes. "So I left. I walked until I couldn't walk anymore. When I saw your wagon, I thought, maybe I could rest a little, only for the night." Caleb nodded. He didn't interrupt. He understood more than she realized. Life had taught him early that people didn't always get kindness from the ones who should have given it. "You're safe here," he said quietly. Eliza inhaled shakily, as if those words alone loosened something tight in her chest. Later that morning, Caleb took her outside to breathe fresh air. He showed her the horses in the corral, the hens behind the cabin, the open land stretching so far that it felt like freedom itself. The sun warmed her face, and for the first time since waking in the wagon, she seemed less frightened. A little steadier, a little more alive. "I can help," she said suddenly. "You gave me food and a warm place. I want to repay you." "Miss, you don't owe me anything," Caleb replied gently. "But if helpin' makes you feel better, I won't stop you." She smiled again, the second smile of the day. Small but true. As the sun moved across the sky, they worked side by side. It wasn't heavy work, just feeding hens, brushing horses, folding blankets. Caleb noticed how careful she was, how she tried to do everything right, as if afraid of making mistakes. He kept his words gentle and warm, praising her when she helped, making sure she never felt unwanted. By late afternoon, she looked more rested than she had that morning. They sat on a wooden step outside the cabin, watching the sky turn orange. "I don't know what I'll do next," she admitted softly. "I don't have a home anymore." Caleb looked out across the land before speaking. "Well, you're welcome to stay here for the night, and tomorrow too, if you need it." She looked at him with wide eyes, touched by the kindness she didn't expect. "Thank you," she whispered. As evening settled over the ranch, the world felt quieter, calmer, as if the land itself approved of the stranger who had found shelter in Caleb's wagon. Eliza helped him put away tools and close the barn gate. Her movements gentle but steady. Caleb noticed she no longer flinched at sudden sounds or looked around nervously. The day ended with both of them standing near the wagon where it all began. Caleb adjusted the blanket she had slept under. Eliza touched the edge of it, remembering how scared she had been when she climbed inside. "You really aren't angry I slept there?" she asked. Caleb shook his head. "Miss, you were cold, hungry, and worn out. You did what you had to. And besides," he gave her a soft smile, "you didn't cause any trouble." Eliza lowered her gaze, shy but grateful. She felt something unusual, a small sense of safety, a tiny glow of trust that had begun somewhere between the morning's fear and the day's gentle kindness. And as the stars came out one by one, she realized she had stumbled into a place she never expected to find. A quiet ranch, a soft blanket, and a cowboy who didn't ask much and didn't demand anything from her. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. The next morning came softly, with warm sunlight resting on the ranch like a quiet blessing. Eliza opened her eyes before Caleb even knocked on the cabin door. She had slept on a small cot he set up for her, And for the first time in months, her sleep had been calm. No shouting, no fear, no sudden cold, just peace. It felt strange, but in a good way. Caleb stood outside the cabin when she stepped out, already dressed and busy with chores. He gave her a small nod, the kind that meant he was glad to see her awake and well. Eliza felt something warm settle in her chest at the simple gesture. "You don't have to work today," Caleb said, wiping his hands on his shirt. "You can rest if you want." "I rested all night," she replied with a small smile. Caleb didn't argue. He simply motioned toward the barn. Together, they started the morning feeding the animals. Eliza gathered eggs from the chickens, gently holding each one as if it were something precious. Caleb watched her from the doorway, noticing how careful and patient she was. She wasn't used to this kind of peaceful work, but she moved with quiet determination. They talked little at first, but the silence between them was comfortable. Caleb explained how to brush the horses, how to calm them with a steady hand. Eliza listened closely, eager to learn. As time passed, she began to speak more, sharing small stories of her childhood safe memories, the ones before life turned harsh. She told him how she used to sew tiny dresses for dolls, how she loved to read whenever she found a book, how she dreamed of a little home with a garden. Caleb listened without interrupting, his expression warm and thoughtful. He rarely opened up to anyone, but somehow, her gentle voice made it easy. He shared memories too, how he built the ranch from nothing, how he raised horses since he was a boy, how the land gave him peace even when life got rough. By midday, they were laughing together over the stubborn rooster that refused to stay in its pen. For a moment, Eliza forgot she was a runaway. She forgot fear. She forgot the man who chased her miles from home. She felt light, almost free. But freedom has a way of being tested. It happened when the sound of hooves echoed through the open land louder than Caleb's horses ever ran. Caleb stepped outside, eyes narrowing as a single rider approached fast, determined, and angry. Eliza's breath caught in her throat the moment she recognized him, her uncle. He pulled his horse to a sharp stop near the cabin and glared at Caleb. "That girl belongs to me," he said harshly. "She ran off, and I'm here to take her back." Caleb didn't react with fear or surprise. He simply stood taller, one hand resting calmly at his side. "She ain't a horse or a piece of furniture," he replied quietly. "She don't belong to anyone. She's a person." Eliza trembled, but she didn't hide. Caleb stepped slightly in front of her, not touching her, but placing himself as a shield without saying a word. It was instinct for him, as natural as breathing. Her uncle pointed at her. "Eliza, come here now. Enough of this foolishness. You're going back and doing as you're told." She shook her head. Her voice trembled, but it was steady enough. "I'm not going back. I won't marry that man. I won't live in fear anymore." A few ranch hands from nearby properties had come into earshot. They didn't interfere, but they watched. People knew her uncle. His harsh tone wasn't new to them. "You don't get to decide," he snapped. "Yes, she does," Caleb said firmly. "She decides what happens to her. Not you." Her uncle looked ready to argue, but the silent stares from the others weakened his confidence. He realized he didn't have the support he expected. He glared at Caleb, then at Eliza. "This isn't over," he growled. Then he yanked his horse around and rode off in a cloud of dust. Eliza's knees weakened immediately. All the courage she held onto suddenly felt heavy. Caleb caught her elbow gently before she could fall. "Easy," he murmured. "He's gone." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness but from the shock of finally standing up for herself. Caleb didn't pull her into his arms, didn't make any bold moves. He simply stayed beside her, steady and warm like the sun. After a long moment, she whispered, "Thank you. I didn't know I could say no like that. I didn't know anyone would stand beside me." Caleb looked at her with calm, honest eyes. You deserved someone on your side. That's all." They walked back toward the cabin slowly. Eliza wiped her tears away and tried to catch her breath. Caleb handed her a cup of water when they stepped inside, and she held it with shaking hands. As the day passed, the fear faded bit by bit. Caleb didn't ask her to stay, but he also didn't act as if she was a burden. He let her continue helping, let her feel useful, let her feel like she mattered. She cooked a simple lunch, and he ate it with gratitude, saying it tasted better than anything he usually made for himself. That made her smile again. In the afternoon, they repaired a broken fence together. Caleb taught her how to swing a hammer without hurting her hand. She made him laugh when she missed the nail and nearly hit her boot. He teased her gently, and she teased him back. The tension of the morning slowly dissolved into warmth. By evening, the world felt quiet again. They stepped outside to watch the sunset spread across the sky in pink and gold. A soft breeze lifted strands of Eliza's hair. Caleb glanced at her, noticing how peaceful she looked now. "I'm sorry about that joke yesterday," he said suddenly, his voice low but sincere. "About you being my wife. I shouldn't have said it. Didn't mean to make you uneasy." Eliza looked at him, surprised. Then she shook her head with a small, soft laugh. "It didn't scare me," she said. "It was the first time someone spoke to me like I wasn't a burden. It almost felt kind." Caleb looked down, almost shy. "Well, I'm glad it didn't trouble you." Silence settled between them, but it was warm and full of unspoken things. The sky darkened, stars appearing one by one. Eliza hugged her arms lightly, not from fear this time, but from the cool night breeze. "You don't have to decide your whole future tonight," Caleb said gently. "I know you've been through a lot. But if you want to stay here for a while, you can. No pressure, no expectations, just a place where you're safe." Eliza's eyes warmed. She looked at the ranch, then at him. "I think," she said slowly, "this is the first place where I've felt safe in a long time." Caleb didn't answer immediately, but the small smile he gave spoke enough. Days turned into a gentle pattern. Eliza woke early, helped with chores, cooked meals, and slowly brought a softness into the cabin that had been missing for years. Caleb found himself looking forward to her laughter, her stories, even her quiet moments of concentration. She filled the ranch with something warm and bright, something he hadn't realized he needed. One evening, she sat outside the wagon, the same place she had slept when he found her. Caleb joined her, leaning against the wheel. "This place saved me," she said softly. "And you did too." "Where?" "I just offered you a blanket," Caleb replied. "No," she corrected gently. "You offered me dignity. You offered me kindness." He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke the truth he had kept inside. "Eliza, the day you climbed into that wagon was the luckiest day I've had in a long time." She felt her heart swell, not with fear, but with hope. "And staying here, it feels right." Caleb didn't touch her, didn't rush a single moment. He simply nodded, his eyes warm. "Then stay," he whispered. "As long as you want." Eliza smiled, a smile filled with quiet certainty. She had come to his ranch seeking shelter for one night, but she found something deeper. Safety, kindness, and a man whose steady heart welcomed her without asking anything in return. Under the wide sky, beside the wagon that changed everything, she knew she had finally found a place where she belonged, not by force, not by fear, but by choice.